everyone, I'm going to be telling you how to make peanut butter treats at home. Both Max and Pete love these treats. Max actually has a bit of a sensitive stomach and he still loves them, so they work great for dogs with sensitive stomachs. This is going to be the same recipe that we used to make a large 6 cookie for Petey's 6-month birthday, as well as our Christmas cookies that we cut out into fun shapes like hearts and trees. You can use this recipe in a lot of different ways, so I'll be showing you just one way that we use it to make training treats for Pete. Okay, so the ingredients that you'll need is whole wheat flour, 1 egg, baking powder, 1 cup of water, peanut butter, and some honey. So the first thing that you are going to want to do is take 2.5 cups of whole wheat flour and pour it into the bowl. So here's 1, here's another cup, and then here's our 1/2 cup, which is 2.5 cups total. The next thing that you're going to want to do is grab 1 egg and crack it into the bowl like so. The next ingredient that we're going to need is 1 teaspoon of baking powder. You're going to want to dump that into the bowl. Now that we have 2.5 cups of whole wheat organic flour, 1 egg, and 1 teaspoon of baking powder in the bowl, you want to mix it together till well combined. Once those ingredients are all mixed together, you're going to want to add 1 cup of water. Next up, you're going to need to grab Pete's favorite part of the biscuit, the peanut butter. You'll add 1 cup of peanut butter into the mixture. Make sure you scrape out any of the excess in the measuring cup. And now finally, we're on to our last ingredient, the honey. You're just going to add 2 tablespoons of honey for a little bit of sweetness. It isn't shown in the video, but make sure, just like you did with the peanut butter, to get every little bit of honey outside of the measuring scoop before you move on. Now that we finally have all of the ingredients in our bowl, we can start mixing. You'll want to stir this until well combined. As you begin to mix, you'll start to see the dough form. After you finish mixing, make sure you take this time to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Once your dough starts to form and isn't so liquidy, you can dump it out of your bowl. As you can probably see, there are still a lot of flour chunks, so everything isn't combined fully yet. So what you're going to want to do is knead the dough into your hands until it becomes slightly greasy and doesn't have chunks of flour. You do not need to pre-flour your surface, as the dough shouldn't stick too hard to your countertop. In order to mix the dough, I used a kneading motion like you would when making bread. I pushed it away, then folded it over and pulled it towards me, then turned it 90 degrees, and then repeat. But if you don't want to do that, or if it seems too fancy for you, you can always just pull it apart and push it back together until it's well combined. Once you've mixed your dough until there's no more flour spots, you're going to want to roll it out to the thickness that you want it to be at the end. This dough does not rise in the oven like a normal cookie would. So I roll it out to probably about 1/2 to 1/4 inch thin, but I really just eyeball it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Once you've rolled it out, then you can move on to cutting. As you can see, I finished rolling out my dough. Now, there's 2 different things you can use. You can use a heart-shaped cookie cutter like I have here, or any other shape that you'd like, or what you can do is take a large knife like this one, or any other knife, and cut it into small pieces for training. This is what I found most helpful when using this recipe, but I've also used the cookie cutter method to make some fun festive cookies like Christmas tree cookies. I just want to take the time to mention to say that if you are a kid or not comfortable using a knife, see if you can get a parent or friend to help you. In order to get to my small shapes, I cut them into strips like this, and then fold them over and cut them the other way. One technique that I have learned through making these several times is that when you cut, you'll want to cut straight across and then push it away. They don't have to be all the way separated, and you'll see why later. Once I cut enough up for one batch, I put them into this bowl, and then I lay them out onto the baking sheet. We used a very large baking sheet, but you can use a smaller one if that's all you have. Make sure you spread them out over all the baking sheet. You do not want them on top of each other. This is also the time where you can take any that still might be stuck together and separate them. Then you're going to want to put them into the oven. Now, depending on the size of these, you'll want to cook these for about 6 to 8 minutes. I started out with 6 and ended up having to cook them another minute or 2. So it really depends. You can't really go too wrong with this recipe though. Now these are fresh out of the oven, and as you can see, they are still a little bit squishy, which is okay. It's hard to tell if they're done because at first I thought they'd be hard once they were done cooking. So what I'm going to do is pour these into this bowl over here. As I was pouring, I noticed on the back, or on the bottom side, that they are a little brown. That's how you know they're pretty much cooked. You shouldn't cook them longer if you see that browning on them. Now, over here, you can really tell the difference between the cooked ones with a little bit of browning on them, even if they're larger like that one, or the uncooked ones that are still squishy and have a different coloring. So what I'm going to do for the second batch, and this actually happened to be our last batch, is I'm going to pour them all out. See, they're kind of all clumped together from sitting in the bowl, and I'm going to spread them all out onto the pan again. Now this pan is still very hot from being in the oven, so make sure you be careful and watch your fingers. But you just want to spread them out thin like the other one and bake them again for 6 to 8 minutes. Also, if you are choosing to do the cookie cutter method where you're making fun shapes, make sure you cook them for 18 to 20 minutes. Since these are so small, they cook a lot faster than if they were a regular sized cookie. Okay, the timer just went off, so these are all done. I like to double check just to make sure. It's okay if you don't see the browning on all of them. They don't have to have that to be done. Just make sure they're not gooey or still uncooked in the middle. Okay, now I'm just going to transfer those cooked ones into the bowl with the rest of the cooked ones that I put, and then we're all done. Okay, and this is a full batch of training treats all done. This batch usually lasts me about 2 weeks of training with Pete, as well as giving some to our other dog Max, but that can vary depending on how often you train your dog and how many treats you give your dog a day. Now, these are still very hot, so I like to take some aside and put them on the countertop so they can cool a lot faster, and I can give them to the dogs since they are very patiently waiting for their treats. I like to store these treats in this bowl on our countertop, but if you feel more comfortable, you can put it in a sealed Tupperware container, or you can just keep it in a baggie or a brown paper bag. Anything really works. It's okay if they get a little bit harder. In fact, they will harden up a little bit as they cool down. So as you can see, Pete loves these treats. They're one of his favorites. So thank you guys so much for watching, and if you end up making these at home, please make sure that you tag Pete on Instagram at Pete.the.schnoodle. Bye!